Welcome to Newsmakers from your local election headquarters. I'm Jane Ann Bugda along with Andy Mahalchik. We are beginning a new political season. We have a lot to talk about. Andy and I have been interviewing a number of candidates, but today we are sitting down with our political analysts to talk about the upcoming election season. And Andy and I are joined by Attorney Chris Cullen, Dr. David Sosar, and David Yonki. We have a lot to talk about.
Let's get right into it. If we seem excited, it is because we are. And even before on air, we were talking about many of the marquee races across the state, across the Commonwealth, the state of Pennsylvania, and of course, local state representative and Senate races we'll talk about. Let's get right to what we think is the meatiest campaign run for U.S. Senate in Pennsylvania. Some are describing it as a clash of the political titans. Democrat incumbent Senator Bob Casey taking on challenger Republican Lou Barletta. Both are from northeastern Pennsylvania. Of course, most of us know both gentlemen for quite a long time, their track record. Let's start with Dave Yonki. What's, again, preliminarily, how's this race taking shape, Dave?
Well, as you said, this is a clash of political titans from northeastern Pennsylvania. But I think Lou Barletta is going to find out that Pennsylvania is not Luzerne County. I believe that when the president came to campaign for him, that it was a self-serving thing for Mr. Trump and not necessarily for Barletta. People should keep in mind that here in Luzerne County, Luzerne County carried Pennsylvania for the president. And I don't think that's going to translate into the general election because Barletta has to defend the president. And so far he has been defending the president right up to the line. And I believe that those debates between Casey and Barletta are going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the debates. I'm not quite sure exactly how many or when they're going to be held as of yet, but I'd look forward to those. A few of the things that I think need to be made aware of at this point, and I've been watching Casey's commercials an awful lot. I mean, he's been putting out an awful lot of information. In fact, he's even turned negative already. Barletta is still, he's making his bus tours, but he's not been visible nearly as much, except for the Donald Trump. I think what you're going to see is two opposing campaigns. One of a television barrage by Casey, and a second one, if Barletta gets into it at all in television, it will be later because of the money factor. Casey's got $10 million to spend. Barletta right now on hand has $1.5 million. There's a big difference there, and he's got to get that word on out. He's known in northeastern Pennsylvania, but he needs the surrogates to come in. Casey, on the other part, doesn't want any surrogates in here. He doesn't want the Nancy Pelosi. He doesn't want anybody to speak for him. He wants to speak for himself and use Dad's name. So I think you're going to see two completely different kind of campaigns.
If I may, I would agree with both those observations, but I would go a step further. The nature of those campaigns so far have emulated the national scene along political fault lines. For example, Senator Casey's re-election campaign, through his advertising, has dealt with issues that have meaning to constituents that he has served and the Casey family, through his father, have served throughout this Commonwealth since Governor Casey first entered the state Senate. Senator Casey has been able to bring to the fore those things he's accomplished for Pennsylvania. And it's a very positive, uplifting, and somewhat inspirational story. Congressman Barletta has followed the themes laid out by the Trump administration, especially the president, and those themes are not anything other than perhaps fear-laden and perhaps divisive, perhaps more negative. They're certainly not uplifting, they certainly are not inspirational, but they are two different campaigns. And I think that the regional aspect of Congressman Barletta's position is going to haunt him in a big state like Pennsylvania. The Casey name has been tested time and time again as a reliable, stable, trustworthy name for a public servant. And I think Senator Casey will reap tremendous benefit of his service as well as his commitment.
I think he does. I think the name Casey rings loud and clear throughout Pennsylvania. I think he's also served up to Barletta some of the things that Barletta can hit him on. Example, coal, the tax the taxes that were passed without Democratic votes. I think you're looking at the possibility of a proposed immigration policy without Democrats again. And most certainly, I think you're going to see surrogates reminding everybody that Casey, as an example, refuses to deal with Kavanaugh as the nominee. So now, whether Barletta uses those or not, I don't know that he is, and I don't understand that. But I do think that there's a possibility that if he were to actually get out there, he's got ammunition to use. I don't know if he's going to use it.
Well, if Democrats aren't energized by the immigration issue and Barletta's past history with it, I don't know what's going to energize him. I can't see him doing well in Philadelphia and even in parts of, southwestern Pennsylvania.
Now, let me just ask this quickly. Now, you touched upon it, the Trump factor. What do you think? Does he come back again to stir up the tried and true around here?
Yes.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, there are three constituencies that Donald Trump has. Okay, the people that will support him no matter what, the people that think he is a horrible person, all right, and then the people that basically voted for him because they felt that he would be a reasonable alternative, and now all of a sudden they're saying, oh my heavens, look at what happened. I don't want to talk politics anymore because everybody's fighting. Well, they added fuel to that fire, and I don't know if they're going to come out to vote to change that or else they're going to sit home. So the Trump factor, it's going to be a factor. It's almost like a gorilla in the room. I don't think, personally, in the state of Pennsylvania, it's going to help Barletta because, as I pointed out, he did not carry the state of Pennsylvania by a lot of votes.
And the bases are going to make a big difference. Casey's got his base, and it's a big base that he has because of Dad. Barletta's base is Trump's base. And while they'll show up to vote, the numbers don't add up right now.
Could I just say one thing about Dad, though? I think that a lot of people who are voters now know of Bob Casey, the governor, but I think the current voters right now, if you ask them to really tell you what Bob Casey Sr. was, I think Bob Casey Jr. Has really staked out a claim for himself, and he's become energized as an anti-Trump person.
Yeah, we remember him. That's it.
Well, we're going to take a quick break.
Fired up, folks.
They are fired up. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to continue our conversation. We're going to switch a little bit gears. We're going to talk a little bit about the new districts in our region. You're watching Newsmakers from your local election headquarters. Check us out on pahomepage.com or under the Newsmakers link and the local election headquarters link. We'll be right back.
And welcome back to Eyewitness Newsmakers from your local election headquarters. Here talking everything election 2018 midterms coming up. We have our three political analysts with us. We're going to talk about, let's go into the new districts. Folks, these are not your grandparents' districts. Chris Cullen, what district do you think really stands out with you in the new realignment?
Well, in the new realignment, the Supreme Court reshuffled the deck, and in a way that allowed for gerrymandering to get tossed aside, and so these districts are somewhat cohesive and somewhat reflective of the region they are geographically associated with. Let's take the 8th. The 8th is very interesting because now northeastern Pennsylvania is in a section by itself and not meandering down along the Susquehanna for many miles. And that is a great district, and it fits very well for the two candidates that are running. One of them, the incumbent, Matt Cartwright, has been a very strong congressman for this area. He's on the Appropriations Committee. He has brought money back to this area. He has done that yeoman's work in the Congress and keeping the priorities of this 8th Congressional District in his forefront. So you do have that happening. The challenger, John Trinh, originally from New Jersey, has the issue of trying to acquaint himself to that 8th district. And the 8th district is getting to be more like the old Joe McDade district. It has remnants of that.
The old 10th.
The old 10th, exactly. The old 10th congressional district. So there's cohesiveness between the interest of those various counties. It's a combined interest. And I would go one step further. When you look at the Chamber of Commerce out of Scranton and Wilkes-Barre and out in the Poconos, they have emphasized the northeastern Pennsylvania concept over decades. And that has brought cohesiveness to that district in thinking in terms of a region and not just simple small town politics. They have regional interests. The regional interests are served by this congressional district. So you have boroughs and townships and small cities all on the same level playing field.
Let's talk a little bit about District 9. That's another new district, and it has two new candidates running because there's no incumbent, because that would have been the originally the Lou Barletta seat.
Right.
So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about that. That's a little bit that shuffle too.
Well, and as you take a look at that one, it's two, to some degree, known but unknown entities as far as a congressional seat. It's an interesting one because you've got Denny Wolf, who was a past Secretary of Agriculture. And he became known for that. And as a farmer, and in basically a rural farming area that this is, I can see him getting support, and a lot of support out of the farming group. You've got Dan Muser, who has run for Congress before, but he ran in some of the other congressional districts. He was really running up north in Lackawanna County more so than any place else. And unsuccessfully, I might add, but he's known because of that. So it will really be an interesting, again, battle of two entities that are really trying hard, but somewhat unknown as an entity as how they will do in Congress. Who's going to support who? I think Schuylkill County and Columbia County are going to be strong for Denny Wolf. Where Muser gets his support from, is it the others? Is it not? How much are they going to spend, etc. I think it makes for an interesting race, though, and I think it'll be fun to watch.
And
Well, okay, the 12th, Marino's going to win, no problem at all. But you know, at the beginning of this year, when the Supreme Court was going to be impeached by the Republicans because of the fact of the gerrymandering and the whole bit, what's going to happen is, the bottom line is, there are still going to be 2 Republican congressmen and possibly 1 Democratic congressman. The reason why I say that is Cartwright better watch out for the Trump factor, because there are Republicans in Luzerne County that are for Shryn. Shryn has taken up residence here in Luzerne County. And I could just imagine that there's an entire blue wave across the country, but because Luzerne County votes and keeps Cartwright's margins down, Shryn gets in. But I think Cartwright's going to win, but it's not going to be easy.
I do want to show everybody the 12th district, because that's really
That's
enormous.
unbelievable.
it's huge, and is it the biggest
I think
district?
it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in the state. Here's another little interesting factor. When the state goes through this in 2020 again, I would look to probably see the old map coming back relatively close. And the reason being is because while a lot of people forget, in 2012, when that was voted on and accepted, the state representatives voted on it, and there were 22 Democrats that voted in favor of it. All politics is local, and they were protecting their seats in the state house, and that was why it was accepted. Otherwise, you know, they would have changed it then.
Yeah. One more thing we have to say in terms of the congressional races: go to your regular polling places.
Yes,
you don't want to be worried about, oh my God, where should I go? Go to your regular polling places, and you'll see the names on the ballot who you need to vote for if you want to.
Yeah.
Let me ask this question. What factor, if any, do you think is the fact that some of these candidates don't live in the district? In other words, back in the day with the old Dan Flood, Ken George, McDade, you were from Scranton, you lived in the district, people knew who you were, and that meant something. What about now the candidates coming in and they're not in the district? Does that play at all out there?
The polling might suggest other things when you do it in a sterile environment, but in heated campaign environments, I think it does give people pause. If you're going to be a congressional candidate, if you're going to be a state senate candidate, if you're going to be a state representative candidate, the whole concept is that you're close to the people you represent. Now, I can't think of any other way that you could get close to the people you represent than live in the district you represent, whether it's state rep or state senate or Congress. And I think it's nice the Constitution allows you to serve in Congress without residing in a district, but we have gone beyond the Constitution in the sense our country has come to terms with that congressmen are our local representative to the national government, and they should be with us in our towns, our cities, our townships, our countryside, our rural areas.
One of the things, and I would ask the two other gentlemen to make comment on this real quick, but I think the candidates have an obligation to remind you what congressional district they're actually running for. I've not heard it in the primaries, and I've not heard it in the general election.
Well, when we talk to them, they remind everyone, and when we interview them, and they do remind everyone to go to your same voting place.
They're very aware of that fact.
They are aware of the fact.
Oh yeah, and Schrin has really, gone head on with that, because I mean, he basically said, "Listen, my daughter's a senior in high school, and she's going to stay in the house in Jersey, and I have my house here," which is very unique to say, but hey, it works. It seems to be working for some Republicans.
Well, we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some more races. You're watching Newsmakers from your local election headquarters. Check us out on pahomepage.com, and we'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Newsmakers from your local election headquarters. We're talking about different races that we're going to be covering throughout the season, and one of the interesting races is a state house race in the 121st district. It's the the seat held by the incumbent Eddie Pashinsky and a newcomer, Sue Henry. Now, Sue did not win the primary.
Right.
Somebody else did, and he graciously stepped down to allow her to take the primary.
Right.
Well, explain this to
Well,
us.
here's what happened. Greg Wolovich ran in the primary and won the election. Sue Henry had a contract dispute with the radio station, and she became available. Greg Wolovich decided that for the good of the district and for the good of the party, but the district first, he would step aside and have Sue Henry run. Now, everybody thought that was a good idea, except the Luzerne County Party chairman, who fired Wolovich as the treasurer. So, it's indicative of the 121st of what Sue Henry is up to. It's classic insider, outsider. Eddie Pashinsky, 12-year state representative. He's against property tax reform in its purest form in a district that's building a new school. So that is a major, major issue for people, and I think that is going to be Sue Henry's, calling card in terms of the election. Now, Henry has been a radio talk show host for 16 years, and she's had a conservative bent. And a lot of the people who are attacking her and running against her, not running against her, but basically questioning her candidacy, are saying that, she really had these stances and she's really a Republican and is not going to be for the people. But the bottom line here are two things. She provides a reasonable alternative to Eddie Pashinsky, who many people are saying in 12 years hasn't really done too much. You compare his record with Aaron Coffer's across the river. There's a major issue with him. Now, he's a great guy. He gives a great speech. If you ever heard him, you'd be totally inspired. But I think Sue Henry has an opportunity to win this race. The problem is going to be the 121st. The low energy of the Republican district for years. That might pull him through.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a fun one to watch, only because normally if somebody would step out, you bring in a name, but that's not a known name, and you would expect the incumbent just to walk away. Sue Henry's been around for a long time on the radio. She's a known entity. People have heard her views. She is as skilled and as knowledgeable about the issues as the incumbent, in this case Eddie Pashinsky. So it'll be interesting to watch how they compete against one another and their particular stances. And I think you're right, Dave. Education right now across the state, from the governor's race on down, is the topic to discuss. And it'll be interesting to see how the two conflict on what precisely to do.
So, it's a race that we're watching. It's two candidates we talked to, and you'll be hearing from in the weeks ahead. We have more that we'll be discussing, and you're watching Newsmakers from your local election headquarters. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll wrap things up when we return right after this.
And welcome back. You're watching Eyewitness Newsmakers from your local election headquarters. Andy Michalczyk, Jan Bugda, and our three esteemed political analysts, Dave Yonki, Dave Sosar, and attorney Chris Cullen. We always wrap up these shows many times with memorabilia, and we lost a great American hero, Senator John Kane. And Dave, you have some items of note.
Yeah, this is a 2000 campaign button from McCain's campaign against George W. Bush. And then there was a photo of Well, and we have it up on the screen right now. And that was a race where he won the New Hampshire primary, and then shortly after, Bush beat him with the money. But he was, he was introduced to the American public. The 2008 campaign, this photo was used as a fundraiser, and I have been getting a lot of Republican information through the years, because years ago I was dealing, well, when the blog started, so I got a lot of information on that. This was the iconic McCain picture when he won the nomination in 2008. He was very gracious in defeat. He was a very gracious man. It's still up in the air whether they're going to name the Senate building in Washington for him. The wussification of the Republican Party, the National Southern Republicans don't want it named for him, but that's still an issue that we're still going to be talking about. But he was a great man, and he will be missed. And the way that he dealt with people will be missed.
Absolutely.
Well, we want to thank the three of you
Thank
for
you.
joining us
Thank
for
you.
this, for the kickoff of what is going to be our political season here.
Stay tuned.
Yes,
More to come.
there is more to come. So for Andy Mahalchik, Chris Cullen, David Sosar, and David Yonki, I'm Jane Ann Bugda. We want to thank you for making Eyewitness Newsmakers from your local election headquarters part of your day. Check us out on pahomepage.com. We'll have information there on the districts, on the candidates, and more. And we'll talk again next time.
Eyewitness News presents Newsmakers, winner of the Pennsylvania Association of Broadcasting Award for Excellence in Public Affairs Programming, with your hosts, Jane Ann Bugda and Andy Mahalchik.
Hello and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Jane Ann Bugda along with Andy Mahalchik. The Institute for Public Policy and Economic Development at Wilkes University has a long history in our area. The Institute's research has been the driving force behind a lot of projects and programs across our region. And today we are taking a closer look at their work. When we come back, I'll introduce you to our guests, and our discussion will begin when this edition of Newsmakers returns right after this. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Jane Ann Bugda along with Andy Mahalchik. The Institute for Public Policy and Economic Development at Wilkes University is our topic of conversation today. We are joined by Terry Ohms, who's the Executive Director, and Susan Magnotta, who is the Director of Community Outreach. And you may have heard of the Institute, but you may not be aware of the impact that their research has on our region and our everyday life. So that's what we're going to talk about today. You've been involved in a lot of research over the years, and we want to start by talking a little bit about the history. And we're going to call it the Institute because we're not going to go through the whole name, but for the so tell us a little bit of the history of the Institute and a little bit about what you do.
The Institute was formed in 2004 as a result of a challenge grant from a Wilkes alum who came back to visit family and was very distraught at what was happening in the community. He saw a community that was downsizing, that had increasing blight, lost jobs, and offered a challenge grant to Wilkes University to identify a strategy to try and help rebuild the community. So at the time, Wilkes joined with significant members of the business community as well as the other colleges and universities in Luzerne County to talk about how something like that could be done. And they came to the realization that one of the best things that the university could do would be to provide information and data to inform decision making. Because so often communities, nonprofits, and even businesses tend to make decisions by fire. And without a lot of emphasis and understanding of history and trends and data and the relationship between those things. So with that, the Institute was born.
And as you mentioned, it's based at Wilkes University, but it's not only Wilkes. Who else, what other universities are involved?
Well, in the initial planning stages, Wilkes engaged the other higher education institutions in Luzerne County, King's College, Misericordia University, Penn State Wilkes-Barre, and Luzerne County Community College. Once we actually started work and started looking into the data in the region, we came to realize that Wilkes-Barre and Luzerne County are part of a broader economic region, which includes Lackawanna County mostly directly, as well as some of the other counties, but really Lackawanna County. And with that realization was the recognition that if one county or one community were to succeed, revitalize, and sustain, it wouldn't sustain it for long if the other communities weren't following suit. So a regional approach to enhancing assets, mitigating challenges, and working together would likely be the most successful opportunity that would be lasting and the most impactful. So at that juncture, we started with the higher education institutions in Lackawanna County, and we now have folks like the University of Scranton and Marywood and Johnson College and Keystone College, the medical school, and even the Wright Center for Graduate Medical Education that are at the table, again, along with the business community.
And is it safe to say, Susan or Terry, that really data helps connect the dots between all those organizations, nonprofits, educational, economic, business? Because you were saying before, Terry, you can't wing it. You make decisions under fire. You think you know something's happening. Oh, I'm pretty sure it's happening. But now today we hear a lot about analytics, and data is the key to really connecting everyone together, and you're finding out where the puzzle fits together.
Mm-hmm. One of our board members put it really succinctly when he said, you don't want to be flying a plane in the dark when you're trying to make important decisions that affect the health of our communities and our economy. So what Terry and her team of researchers do at the Institute is provide the region with the data, the research, the troubleshooting, and recommendations so that we can have a very strong, healthy communities, and that will hopefully, entice businesses to come here and workers to come here and that in turn gives us a healthy economy.
You have a pretty impressive client list, and not only are they communities and from around the area, but tell us a little bit about some of the people that you work with.
We have a number of clients from around the region, local governments. We've done work for the state government, the federal government, several local nonprofits, regional nonprofits, as well as a number of private business and industry. We also have a track of community-based research, which is research that we just complete for public consumption in hopes that both policymakers and organizations will look at the research and recognize that they're in a position to take that data, to take those recommendations and implement programs or initiatives or even policy and regulation that promote positive change.
What's really fascinating, if I can grab the brochure, the magazine, I call it a magazine because it really blew me away several years ago. We started covering and reporting on, you do an annual report, whatever the year is, indicators report, and you really analyze what's happening in northeastern Pennsylvania. And this data, I thought to myself, as a reporter, as a journalist, to research this data on our own would take days, if not weeks, to get it all organized. And there you are presenting it on a silver platter to organizations, and I'm not making light of it, or being flippant with it, but information that really, I'm sure, when I read this report every year and see your report in person, you're like, I did not know that. And I've been around, this is my hometown, but the information in here can really be utilized by a business or nonprofit and say, I did not know that, and it makes a big difference in where they're moving forward.
Let's talk a little bit about what you found this year in the indicator. What was the top finding?
I think one of the top findings is people always believe that, gee, we're not an economically viable region, that there's too many challenges here, too many things that are going wrong. And what we're finding out is that we're a very competitive economic region. We have job growth now. We have business growth. We're a global player. We have a significant export market. The gross regional product of the area has been increasing rapidly rapidly. So economically, the region is doing well. Quality of life, standard of living is improving. It's not improving for everybody, but it is improving. So we're on the right track. We didn't get all of our issues in overnight or in 1 or 2 years, so it takes a little longer to correct them, especially when there are so many other external and internal forces at play. Going to the point again that our region or any one community in the region isn't an island, but it is part of a bigger pie.
Is it, and Susan and I, we were talking before we hit air today, that sometimes, and I'm going to say this anecdotally, I don't have the facts like you guys have, sometimes northeastern Pennsylvania is its own worst enemy, because we hear comments being made or analysis being done without the facts, which you provide, and sometimes those assumptions are just not true. I mean, how often do you find that when you go into the group? If you approach somebody about maybe supporting the institute, and they say, "Well, I know that's not the case," or "This is it's not a good thing," and you show them the facts in the black and white or color and say, "I respectfully disagree. That's not the case."
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting because when I started this with the Institute and I started going into different businesses and meeting with some of our board members, that's a frustration that's consistent with so many people because we have such a great region. And, what I think may have happened is that, it was our region did go through some difficult times. And so I don't know if that gets passed down from generation to generation a little bit, but there are a lot of people, not just us, like working really, really hard to change that perception and doing great things in the region. And it really is moving forward. So it's exciting to see.
And I know when we were talking about some of the findings of this year's study, public transportation was one of the main needs in our area. And why is that? And that's something that is something new for our area, that we need more public transportation?
Well, we started working with the Scranton Area Foundation, which brought in the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia's Community Development Department to look at transportation. And so we were given a great opportunity to provide those two organizations with some research. And what we found out through our research is that transportation, equitable transportation, is an impediment to many things. It's an impediment to jobs. There are people out there willing and able to work but can't adequately get to work. They don't have a vehicle. There are people that have moved here from major metropolitan areas just making the general assumption that there was a variety of multimodal transportation options. Where they came from, it's where they're going to, and then they get here and find out that that's also not the case. And so it impacts healthcare, people missing appointments because they can't get there, everything from education and shopping to religious activities. So it is an impediment. There's not as many options here. The system is not robust and is constrained by a number of federal and state regulations. And so there is an opportunity to work with the public transit systems and other transit providers to provide more options, make it more accessible, and make it equitable so that people of different income levels can choose to ride it, not just if you have to, but in most other larger metropolitan communities, it's the transportation of choice.
And I think a lot of people will be happy to hear that that there is a need and that there's something will be done about it because of this research.
And well, the existing transportation agencies in the counties are on board, and they want to be part of the solution. Like I said, they operate in a very complex regulatory environment on a both federal and state level.